This year I tried another new 35mm film, Ilfocolor VT400. The Ilfocolor brand was relaunched over the last couple of years, seemingly under the radar. They started with a previous iteration of vintage tone, and now this 400+ version is the latest refinement. It's a 400 speed color negative film with a uniquely vintage look, as the name implies. This look is largely due to the desaturated colors and rough grain. To me, it's reminiscent of a bleach bypassed film, or even some old slide films. Overall, it tends to be on the contrasty side, with less latitude than a typical negative film. I've shot some rolls in 3 different cameras, including the half-frame Pentax 17, and I'll show you plenty of examples throughout this video. As a side note, you may be confused about the distinction between Ilford, Harman, and Ilfocolor, or the actual origin of this film stock, but I don't want to bog this video down with company structure and history, so I'll leave that for a separate video or a live stream if you're interested. Otherwise, there's a nice timeline that I recommend as a starting point, which outlines the long and rich history of the Ilford brand. I'll touch a bit more on this at the end, as well as my speculations about the origin of this emulsion. For now, let's look at the first roll I shot, which was in the Nikon L35. This film makes a good option for a point and shoot like that, or just as an everyday film where you want a unique or imperfect look. I made a reel showcasing my first results that I shared on Instagram, which I'll cross-reference on the screen now. As you can see, the film has a punchy yet desaturated look, but colors can still look rich and vibrant, especially in high contrast scenes and lighting. I think this film shines in rich golden light, since it balances nicely with the cool bias that it tends to have by default. These shots were self-developed and scanned using NLP for conversion. I think self-scanning is the way to get the most out of this film, and if you want to try NLP, I'll put a link for a free trial in the description. Don't expect much shadow detail, especially if you underexpose. This film has a large and rough grain structure, so keep that in mind when it comes to your subject and exposure settings. With a good lens, exposure, and scans, you can still get quite a lot out of this film. As you can see in some of these examples from the Nikon F2, VT400+ is capable of some fine results and nice tonal range. Exposing for the shadows will give cleaner results as seen in this example. But I wouldn't shoot it expecting a lot of detail in the deep shadows. This film will always have that rough look compared to something premium like portrait. Scenes shot in the shade or overcast conditions will take on a cool, almost metallic look. This can work well for some shots and, again, reminds me of a bleach bypass look. But as mentioned, golden light is where I found the best results. Something magic happens and you can get shots like this, which is my favorite so far. I brought back a bit of saturation during the scan, and to my eyes, it gives a bit of a Kodachrome look and feels like a photo from a different era. And if you're okay with the grain, this film can give images that you can print to decent sizes. The roll I shot in the Pentax 17 magnified the appearance of the grain as expected. I usually prefer low speed and fine-grained films for half frame, but this can still work well for happy snaps and everyday stuff. These shots were developed and scanned by Iroha's Photo as individual frames on a Noritsu scanner, and a lot of the images still held up quite well. My favorites were from this high contrast scene of a dry cleaner in the late afternoon light. The pops of color and simple patterns counterbalance well with the grainy vintage look. I also liked these shots taken around Brunswick at golden hour, again reinforcing my preference for using this film in late or early light. For street photography, the high speed of this film can make it quite usable. However, you'll need to accept the high contrast and low shadow detail if shooting in harsh light. Combined with the graininess, it can be a bit heavy-handed. Highlights hold up fairly well, even when overexposed. They will start to get washed out, but they don't lose detail too easily. As mentioned, I'd be more careful about the shadows if you want detail there. Overall, my recommendation is to expose this film between 200 and 400 and look for colourful scenes. Preferentially shoot in late or early light where possible. The warm light will counterbalance the natural cool tones of this film. It can scan well using lab scanners, and you can get a bit more control and latitude if you digitize yourself. So, why shoot vintage tone 400+? If you just want to try something different or want that vintage aesthetic to your shots, it can be a versatile, everyday film for shooting in sunny conditions or in a point and shoot with a flash. You can be selective with scenes, exposure and scanning to optimize your results further. This film comes in proper canisters with DX coating for wider versatility. The manufacturing quality and packaging are in line with other mass-produced consumer films. So this isn't a typical hand-loaded or re-spooled film. When I inquired with Ilford Imaging, I was told this was produced in Europe to their custom and optimized specifications. Of course, many of you may see similarities to the Orwo Wolfen NC films, which are also produced in Europe. So my guess would be that this is a custom or tweaked version of one of those emulsions, finished and packaged in China by the factories that are in charge of other big-name films. So the advantage of this is the quality control benefits you get compared to hand-rolled canisters. This also means wider availability and the option for both 24 and 36 shot rolls. Now for some things I don't like about this film. The grain can be too much sometimes, and the colors can be unpredictable if you're relying on it for important work. Also, the film won't give you a lifelike reproduction of most scenes, but hopefully you wouldn't be expecting that if you shot this film. Availability could be even better in some regions, and I'd like to see more marketing and discounted multi-roll packs to increase accessibility. But as we speak, I've been seeing this area improve rapidly. Here, the price is between 19 and 25 Australian dollars per roll. Overseas, it's about 15 US dollars for a 36-shot roll. So here in Australia, it's on par or cheaper than a roll of Kodak Ultramax, whereas in the US it costs much more than Ultramax. This lack of price parity is a constant frustration in the film market though, and another area I would like to see improved. Unfortunately, it can be a bit of a Wild West situation where retailers can mark up prices as they see fit. Anyway, I like the fact that films like this are being mass-produced and increasing the availability of film in general. I want film photography to thrive for as long as possible, and I think the properties and marketing of vintage tone will help draw younger and newer photographers into film. I'm seeing it pop up in mainstream retail stores here like JB Hi-Fi and even Big W, which is something that can't be said for alternative options like Wolfen NC. It's finished well and has DX coding for wider compatibility, so if you want to try something different, it's worth a shot. As for the segmentation of the various brand names or similarity to other stocks, I don't think it matters much. I gladly shot films like Agfa Vista in its final days, even if I knew it was a Fuji emulsion of some kind. Or the various experimental films from Lomography or Rolly. I've always enjoyed those even if there were crossovers between some. I care more about the results, quality, and accessibility. There's been segmentation and crossovers in film stocks for decades now. It's nothing new. If you've tried Ilfocolor Vintage Tone 400 Plus, what are your thoughts? Would you shoot it regularly or just once to try something different? What are your tips for exposure and scanning? Let me know in the comments. Other people might also benefit from your experience. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.